Hi guys, this is Asal. I'm studying for the bar and I wanted to review my notes with you. So today I'm studying defamation. This video is actually the part 3 of the defamation, and I've come to realize that there's no way I can present all this to you. There's just so much into it. But today I'm just going to be talking about privileges and defenses. But there's also some things I didn't say in the other videos, and I just want to say it here. It's just these 3 words and I want you to research it. One is innuendo, the other one is colloquium, and the other one is inducement. So just look up these 3 words. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it. As I said, today I'm going to be talking about privileges and defenses to defamation. So, if a valid privilege applies, the defendant is not liable for defamation, even if the defendant's conduct meets every element of the tort. Okay, so there are actually 2 kinds of privilege to defamation. There's the absolute privilege, and there's also the qualified privilege, which I'm going to talk about right now. The qualified privilege, first of all, the accurate reports about the public proceeding that has to exist. So what is a public proceeding? A public proceeding is basically any legislative, administrative, judicial proceeding if some kind of official action is taken, but it also might include non-governmental proceedings of significant public interest. This includes meetings, assemblies, or other gatherings which are open to the general public and for the purpose of discussing things of the public. So it has to be for the purpose of discussing things of public. And what is accurate? Accurate is fair abridgment of what took place at the public proceeding that is substantially correct. Okay, so what is fair? Fair is not too one-sided, so as long as it is not too one-sided is fair, or unfairly skewed to make one party or one side of the dispute look good at the other's expense. The second part is statements in public interest. So there's 2 types. The defendant reasonably or correctly believes that the information impacts an important public interest. And the second one is the interest requires a defamatory matter to be communicated to someone who is authorized to act if the statement is true. Okay? So, I would like to real quick mention the second restatements of torts. Over here, privileges applies to defamatory communication to public officials concerning matters that affect the discharge of their duties. So this has to do with public officials and the discharge of their duties. The third one, the defendant believes the communication is necessary to protect an important interest of the defendant, the recipient, a third person, or a definable group of people with the common interest. Okay, so what is an important interest? I would like to talk about that real quick. An important interest is an interest to which the law affords some degree of protection and is bound up in illegality and balances advantage versus harm. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is statements that is made to protect the interest of the third person. This must be appropriate under the general standards of the decent conduct. Okay, so I would like to move on, and I would like to talk about the 2 sets of rules that govern whether abuse has occurred. So there's the special rules and then there's the general rules. Under the general rules, it covers all qualified privileges, and the special rules, they cover the privilege to report accurately about the public proceeding. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about are the general rules. So first, it is made with actual malice unless the privilege invoked is covering accurate reports of the public proceeding. Second, it is published for the purpose other than the vindication or protection of the interest that the privilege was meant to protect. Third, the statement is made to someone who the defendant did not reasonably believe required communication to effectuate the purpose of privilege, usually meaning excessive publication. And then fourth, communication of the defamatory aspect is not reasonably believed to be necessary to accomplish the purpose of the privilege. Okay. So, the next thing I want to talk about are the special rules, okay? If multiple assertions are in a given statement, a person must analyze each assertion to determine whether it is defamatory and whether the privilege might apply. So, all that I just talked about, they were the qualified privileges. Now I would like to move on, and I would like to talk about absolute privileges. Okay, so absolute privilege immunize a defendant from liability for defamation, even if they are abused. Okay, what does this mean? This means that the plaintiff's consent to publication of the defamatory statement is absolutely privileged. This means that if the plaintiff consents, then the publication is privileged. And then another thing is statements made by judges, by attorneys, or jurors, or witnesses, or similar officers in the course of the judicial proceeding that relate to the matter before the court and the person's role in the proceeding. The next thing is statements made by member of the Congress or of any state or local legislative body. These are privileged if the statement is made as a direct part of the legislative process. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are the executive officials. So executive officials enjoy absolute privilege to defame if the defamatory statement is made in the performance of their duty. So as long as it's made in the performance of their duty, they're privileged. And the next thing is any defamatory statement communicated between a husband and a wife is absolutely privileged. So in a marriage is privileged. And also a person who is required under their law to communicate or facilitate communication of defamatory material cannot be held liable for doing so. So that was the last thing I wanted to say. I really hope you enjoy studying defamation. Just when you study defamation, keep in mind all these elements. The plaintiff, the plaintiff status. Is the plaintiff a public or a private figure? Is the statement defamatory? What's a defamatory statement? Basically, a communication is defamatory if it disgraces the plaintiff's, harming the plaintiff's reputation by lowering the plaintiff in the community. And then the next thing I want you to talk about is it has to be about the plaintiff. So here's where you mention the colloquium, and the statement must definitely be false. Okay, so if the statement is true, it is not defamatory. And then over here, you talk about the fact versus opinion. So the statement must be about the fact, and it cannot be just an opinion. And the statement must be published, okay? This means it must be heard and it must be understood by at least one person. Okay, so there are these cases where someone makes a defamatory statement, but they make it in another language. So with that qualified. Okay, so it must be heard and it must be understood. And then over here is the state of mind, damages, the two type of damages. So I moved fast. With the state of mind, did they do it with actual malice, with reckless disregard? You keep that in mind over here. And over here is the damages. You talk about there's the general damages, there's the special damages. These general damages are for humiliation and wounded feelings, and the special damages are for loss of job and for monetary damages, okay? And finally, the one I was just talking about is the defenses. There are different types of defenses. For example, over here, consent is a defense and also truth is a defense. So I really hope you enjoy studying defamation, and I'm going to wrap this up and I'm going to wish you good luck. Good luck.